third installment of the Shabbat Midrash with After's Heart Ministries. I'm Rabbah Q. My assistant, Deborah Lynn, will be here in a second. She is going to give us our next question. In the meanwhile, let's say that we're going to do our best here. We're going to jump into the last part of Noach, which is about the Tower of Babel. Couple things that I want to point out early on in the Tower of Babel while we're waiting for her. Number one is they used tar. Let's talk a minute about tar. In the parasha Lech Lecha, Abraham is dwelling in the area of the oaks of Mamre, his friend. Honor, Eshcol, and Mamre are Amorites. In the battle with Kedorlaomer, who is the king who forms an alliance of 4 other city-states, attacks Sodom and Gomorrah and chases the king of Sodom and his generals into the tar pits. Okay? Now, what's really important for you to realize is these tar pits is they are filled with bitumen. Bitumen is used to this day to waterproof brick and when I say waterproof, let me explain. You can waterproof a basement in such a way if you use enough of it correctly to where the entire area could be saturated with water and that water not come into your basement if you do it correctly. And it is a very difficult task because if you get any dirt in your tar, it is a place where gravity will pull the dirt off of the wall and it will then be a place where you could have a leak. My point being is we use waterproofing to this day. We use bitumen. Now, there's a couple of reasons why it's important. Number one is the ark was covered in it. The ark was made waterproof in such a way that it could be submerged in water, even if just partially submerged. Okay? But the point behind it is that it was waterproofed. It was prevented from becoming saturated with water.
How do we see that? How do we know that?
The instructions for building the ark.
No. I meant for the Tower of Babel.
Oh, yeah. So let me get to that. So when I say that they built a waterproof city and they built a tower whose height could reach the heavens, they were doing it in order to avoid another flood. When they used tar instead of mortar, they glued the bricks together with tar. That is a waterproof vessel. As stationary as brick may be, it is waterproof. And we don't know the construction of their buildings. It is very possible, y'all, that they made a city that could dwell underwater, which totally jives with the Atlantean legend. So in context, the reason I bring this up is that Genesis 11 contains information that indicates that they built a waterproof city with a snorkel, with a tower that could be above the water, so that at least their kings, priests, and prophets could ascend that tower and not be hurt by the flood. Okay? So now let's jump to Cindy's question.
So Cindy's question is, we're talking about chapter 11 here.
That's good coffee.
Cindy asks in Genesis 11:5-8, who is Adonai speaking to?
We'll go ahead and use Renee's tablet for that. I don't think she's too wild about that situation. Okay. Genesis 11 verses what?
It's verses 5-8.
But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. 5-8, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think, and let me say this, I think, but I can't know for sure because Cindy left. She's asking, why is it plural? She's asking, who is Yahweh talking to when he says us? And that is the same response that I get, or the same question that I get from Genesis chapter 1. Let us make man in our image. So, this is gonna get a little heavy, because I'm gonna openly admit that I cannot stand the Trinitarian doctrine. I think it is inappropriate, highly, highly inaccurate in its description of the God I serve, and is anti-Semitic. Now, I could tell you every single proponent of the Trinity hates Jews. Go study it. You will find every last doctrinal argument about the Trinity accompanying something that is an anti-Semitic slur about the Jews. So we're not going to get too far and too deep into that. But now what we need to understand and talk about is emanation. And the way that I want to go about this is to say that when we're dealing with the intensification of all power in the universe, we are dealing with him and him alone, or I should say it and it alone. There is no higher order of self than the IPU, intensification of all power in the universe. Term Jessica came up with, IPU. There is nothing else that can exist in conjunction with an energy that is accelerating, not slowing down. Energy that travels at the speed of thought, not light. A technology we haven't discovered yet. Soon we will discover the speed of thought, but not now. We will be able to mathematically calculate the speed of thought. And it probably won't be until we have something like the Neuralink. But I can tell you that the IPU is an energy that is intensifying and accelerating, which means it violates the rules of physics. It violates the laws of entropy. So it probably even violates Planck's constant. Because Planck's constant says you can only go so far infinitesimally small before you start to get out of order. And that order only exists at a certain size of quanta. So the intensification of all power in the universe cannot have anything exist within it at all. Which means that whatever exists in a realm where that is diminished. And that diminishing is a ceasing of the intensifying and a ceasing of the acceleration. And interestingly enough, if we look at the Higgs field, which is a physics realm that defines the mass of matter as being that which slows down from the speed of light, starts to gain in density and therefore mass or weight. In fact, all weight is mass with gravity applied to it. So the slower the intensification of all power in the universe slows down, the less that it vibrates, the lower frequency that it vibrates at, and the less intensity that it has, the more it turns to matter, the more it turns to a definition and a limitation, and less about a limitless, unstoppable force. Which, of course, its first act of self-denial is and will always be the choice to allow the vessel of reception complete sovereignty to say no. And therefore, the first act of self-denial is a self-denial of the word no, all in the head of this thing, in the mind or the consciousness of this thing. And therefore, right now at this very second, that thought, oh, I want to bestow something on something. Oh, I can't do that because something can't exist with me here. I have to remove me from the equation. Not a whole lot of me, just enough for it to be less tense. Or I mean less intense, less fat, less speed. Let me slow down a bit. Let me de-intensify a bit. Now something can exist, and boom, the first act of creation occurs in this very second. There's no time. Time is an illusion. And so if it's happening in this very second, the thought, I want to create something, boom, we exist. We see it as 75 years of life, of existence. 80 with strength, and anything beyond that is a miracle, a blessing, proof of obedience, proof of the abundance mentality, proof of a healthy lifestyle that doesn't consume the things that Yahweh told us not to consume. 120, according to Genesis chapter 6. So we'll go with 120. Let's say that's the limitation. That's the upper limit of life. It doesn't actually exist as a limitation, and our existence predates our birth and postdates our death. Meaning what? This single thought in this single second is actually occurring at this second. So when Yahweh said, let us, who's he speaking to? Everything from him or it all the way down to the least intelligent mineral. Yeah. And you thought he was talking to the Trinity. No, he's letting the entirety of creation agree with him on this decision. And the entirety of creation is actually what will confound the languages. The continent itself split during Peleg's time, during Eber's time. After the flood. After this game that Babel plays. So who's he talking to when he says, let us make man in our image? All of creation. When he says, let them have dominion, let them subdue and multiply and fill the earth. Who's he talking to? Creation. Us, the fish, the pickle, the onion, the napkin.
All the Elohims.
The dust of the earth. Ugh. Y'all don't know about my hang up with that word dust. And I may not ever share it with you. Cassie, you are an Elohim. Talking to the dog. All right. So that's who he's talking to. Cindy's not here to say whether that satisfies her question or not, but let's move on.
Okay, so the next question is, and you're a little rabbi's naked because you're the one that asked it. And you're the one that answers it most likely. What does it mean to make a name?
Mm-hmm. Where am I getting that from? Let's go take a look.
That's coming from chapter 11, verse 4.
So the first thing that you need to know, and I'm not going to go into great detail with this, is that there is a there's an ancient literary technique called a chiastic structure that is basically a way of writing material to create emphasis on the plot or on the structure of the story using repetitive speech. And it repeats in such a way that it creates an axis on which it pivots. Well, I can tell you the chiastic structure, which I'm not going to show you today, you can go back and watch videos from a long time ago. In fact, they may not even be on my YouTube channel right now. I may have to post them. But you can go back and watch videos of mine where I teach about the chiastic structure from like 2021. But the thing is make a name for ourselves is the part of this thing that is the chiastic structural axis of this particular story. So everything boils down to this one single thing as the reason that Yahweh actually came down and took a look at the city. So going in, let's go ahead and share the screen. And this is what I'm looking for right here. Okay. So going into that in the Hebrew, looking at the reverse inline here, we can see that it says let us make on behalf of us or for the sake of us a name. Okay. So let's talk about the ramifications of this chiastic structure, because Torah, as a spirit of the instruction of Yahweh. See, this is the part where people they don't register. We need to re-register our brains with this. Okay. Go ahead and spotlight that for a moment. All right. Torah does not accidentally omit something, nor does it accidentally include something, nor does it accidentally repeat something, nor does it accidentally highlight something or bookend it, nor does it accidentally parallel things. Those are all literary techniques by a master writer whose name was Moshe, who got Torah from mouth to mouth. If we ever want to go ahead and acknowledge the concept of there being a avatar-like state of a human being, in which, if we look at avatar in the sense of what it is supposed to be in philosophical terms, it is an entity that is able to be possessed and controlled by another higher entity that cannot manifest itself in this realm. I don't believe that's what we're looking at here when we're dealing with Moshe. But please understand, Moshe was a master literally list. Oh, what is the word I'm thinking of? He was a writer. He was a master writer. And in that process, he had direct upload of the information in the spirit of Torah. Which means that which was not written becomes that which is written, which can come to possibly, should I not get too tired, our nugget about the rainbow. But for now, let's just go with the sentiment that Moses got a direct upload of the spirit of Torah through the soul of Torah, Yeshua, mouth to mouth, in such a way that then Moshe turned around and wrote a master work reflecting what was coming out of his mouth. So he said it and then he wrote it, which means Torah has literary techniques designed to put exactly what needs to be in place in such a way that if you do the correct documented equidistant lettering of the Torah in the divisions of the books, by starting on one letter and counting a certain amount to the next letter, you will find the word Torah repeated over and over and over and over again, except in Vayikra. In Vayikra, it is the name Yahweh repeated over and over and over again. A mathematical anomaly that makes the process of Torah perfect. So why do I bring this up? Why do I say these words and explain these things the way that I am? Because when it says that the chiastic structure indicates that let us make a name for ourselves is the most important point in the entirety of Genesis 11 as a chiastic structure. All of the story of Babel is a chiastic structure from the beginning of the story to the end of the story, with the axis or the centerpiece or the center point of the entire thing being the actual issue. In the realm of the Kabbalah, And in the realm of the 4 levels of Hebrew learning, we have the Peshat level or the Malkut level, the kingdom level, the physical realm, the Higgs field acting upon the speed of light in such a way as to create mass and the action of gravity appropriating itself upon that mass, creating weight, thereby creating structure, molecular structure specifically, where specific gravity is drawing things together in such a way that they have density, and depending on their covalent or ionic bond, their ability to be manipulated into thermoplastics, fibers, ceramics, metals, all an illusion of what's really happening with the light. It's slowing down and it's diminishing. And that is actually causing the physical realm. That realm is called, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna switch these up, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble with the Kabbalah. So I'm gonna say that realm is the realm of formation, height, width, depth, time, forming things, shaping things, forming something out of something else. And God took from the dust of the ground, right? Next level up is the Yesod level, or the level at which all of the thoughts of creation and the energy of creation becomes our physical reality and then pours into this physical reality. That realm is the realm of emanation, where the last of the emanations of God become physical reality. That is called the realm of Atzilut. The next realm up from it is the realm of forces, where pure intention and consciousness is the only thing that exists besides the energy itself. And in that place is where these people make a name for themselves. Because the word that's used there, it could have been create, bara. It could have been form, yetzah, but it was our yetzar. It could have been set, sham, but instead it was the word make, asal, the world of Asiya, which is made up of the the upper sifrot of the realm of perception, the realm that is the seeable realm, or the foreseeable realm, or the foregone realm, is going to be Tiferet, or it's going to be Nitzach, Hod, Tiferet, Gevurah, Chesed. It's going to be the realm of the soul of Torah and its dispersed energies: judgment, mercy, humility, and identity, all balanced in the soul of Torah as an intention. So these people ascended the supernatural realm into the realm of forces, thereby doing what? Trying to create a soul of their own Torah. Now, if y'all want to comment, this would be the time. The soul. Go ahead, Paul K.
So basically, it was their human effort versus the divine relationship that they currently had.
Worse, they had ascended into the divine connection and began to create their own set
Got it.
of the divine. They made another place of the winds. Now, in the esoteric legends of the Tower of Babel, it was believed that those who were allowed to ascend into the tower, because the thought process was very similar to Air Force One, get the president off the ground in case something bad on the ground happens. We can defend him better in the air. Therefore, get the important people of knowledge and of stature off the ground, get them in the air. And so the ones who were allowed to go into the tower and ascend the tower were the initiated in the mystic arts. And those who were allowed to be in the tower at all times were those who were making the decisions about the rest of the people. Now, it's important for you to understand that they were doing this as a community effort, but that they were still protecting the knowledge. They wanted to make sure that, unlike before, where all the knowledge was lost, they could basically come back with the knowledge. And that's one of the reasons why Yahweh said, let's scatter them, right? But here's the part that's important, Paul K. They went in and created a different reality in the realm where only forces of intention and energy exist. So the way that you want to think about it is that one of the technologies we have not discovered yet is the speed of thought and the power behind that. And in that technology, we will find when we finally discover it, is that you can move energy with the mind. And the reason for that is because of the sovereignty that the intensification of power in the universe gave the first Elohim, and what that Elohim subsequently granted to the next Elohim down the line until it arrives at us. But the crazy part is that the thought itself is actually causing the energy to move. And when we discover that technology, we will be a very different people. Some will use it for malevolent purposes, i.e. the beast. Some will use it for benevolent purposes, i.e. those in Daniel chapter 12 who shine. But the point behind it is that we at large do not understand what they were actually doing at Babel. Yahweh said nothing would be impossible for them. You think about the most impossible thing, the most improbable thing that could happen in your life. Wealth, old age, healthy old age, whatever. And you are in the realm of what was not impossible for the Babylonians. Now, why do I say Babylonians? Because the kingdom of Babel was established as a result of the Tower of Babel. So in principle, the way that you could think about this is because they used the word asa, they were operating on the level that Yahweh was when he said, let us make man in our image. They're operating with those energies. And the fact that it's a place of the winds, like let us create our own breath, that's what the word name means. Remember from our Midrash, Paul K., I don't know if you were there when Deborah received her name. I can't remember. But the premise is that a person's name is actually the breath that they could breathe. It is the life that they could have if they chose to accept the energy and potential of that breath. And so when it says, let us make a name for themselves, they were actually working on trying to create a way to manufacture an Elohim. And Yahweh said it, nothing would be impossible for them because they had tapped into the world of Asiya and were using it for malevolent purposes. How do we know? Because in the legend of the Tower of Babel, they were practicing genetic manipulation and a number of other things. Now, that's not in the book of Enoch, just so you guys know. I know the book of Enoch talks about genetic manipulation, but I'm talking about that these people were trying to, from what I can tell, figure out a way to tap into the world of Asiya, but eliminate Yahweh from the process. We will soon be able to tap into the world of Asiya. We can scratch the surface of Yesod right now. We can scratch the surface of Atzilut, the surface of emanation now. Okay. So that's the first rabbi's nugget. The next would be your question.
Oh, you want to do that before Rainbow?
Uh-huh. Yeah, because Rainbow's going to rock you guys' brain.
Okay.
Deb already knows that we talked about it last night, but I don't think she remembers. I think she was falling asleep.
Okay, so the question here is, why do we only see partial commands for Genesis 1:28 to be fruitful and multiply? Genesis 1:28 says, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, or have dominion over it. Like in 1:20. So when he's talking to the birds of the air and the fish of the sea, he says, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth, right? Why do we see this in Genesis 8:17 and in 9:1, and dominion is not mentioned? Why, or was dominion stripped away from man after Noah when Adonai removed the curse from the ground because of man, because man's corruption led to the corruption of the earth? So why do we see no dominion in Genesis 8:17 and 9:1?
Okay, so let's take a look at first what's missing in the Hebrew, okay? So the way that we're going to do that is we'll jump back to last week's parasha and go specifically to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. Okay? Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over it. The Hebrew words that we're looking for here is going to be Peru, Uvru, Umilu, Kivsua, Radu, and Gid or Bidgat. Actually, Bidgat is not important. There we go. So the last one is Uradu. Okay. So in the Hebrew, be fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and have dominion. Okay. So now going into, where did you say 20? In verse 20.
In verse 1:20,
it says
birds there.
To the birds,
try 21 just because
21.
my Bible was off sometimes.
Okay. In verse 21, we see, nope, that's not it either.
Oh, my bad. 22.
22.
Mhm.
Teri uravu, orvus, umilu. So what's missing is the kasavu and the radu, right?
Yep.
Okay. Which is subdue and have dominion. Okay. So what are we saying? That there is no man present in creation before 128, and therefore when he gives the instruction to creation itself, he tells them everything except the authority.
Right. He doesn't give them the authority in verse 20. He gives man the authority in verse 28, right? But
okay, then in going over to Genesis 9, correct? No, Genesis 8.
8:17 and 9:1.
8:17 and 9:1.
Mm-hmm.
Be fruitful and multiply right here. Same instructions, be fruitful and multiply. And we learned last week, those are commands, right? And then you said in 9:1,
Mm-hmm.
be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So interesting. In 8, it's only be fruitful and multiply, but in 9, it's be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Right there. Fruitful, multiply, and fill. But these commands or instructions are in verse 28 missing. This one and this one are missing. I had this come up in a Midrash, I want to say 4 years ago, when Amy was here and Rose was here and a couple other people were here. But the kivsu or kivshua and radu. So your question is why is it not present? Did you have a theory on why it's not present?
Well, okay, so in verse 17, 8:17, he tells us again, be fruitful and multiply. I'm sorry, I can't read over there. And then he goes on to talk about that the earth will no longer be corrupted for man's sake, that the curse that he placed upon the earth, the earth will no longer be cursed. I will never again curse the ground because of mankind, since the images of a person's heart are evil, and we know this is the concept, evil from his youth, right? So he's never again going to destroy the earth for man's sake. He's no longer going to curse the earth for man's sake. But, and then it's above that and below that are both these commands to say, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. So I was wondering, and I don't think that this is the case, so you're going to have to help me through it, was the command to subdue the earth and have dominion over it, removed, just like the curse was removed. Once again, I'm telling you, I don't believe that this is the case, but that's what I'm looking at, is there's no command here to say have dominion over the earth.
What type of person receives the inherited authority of Adam?
Sons of Adam.
Okay. So technically speaking, Adam and the sons of Adam would be the extent of dominion. Right?
Okay.
So is there anything to indicate that that authority was removed from Adam?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, other than him being thrown out of the garden, I don't believe that anything indicates that his dominion is removed.
Okay. Is there evidence of deliberate? Let me explain deliberate creation to you guys. Deliberate creation is where creation is basically obedient to your whim, obedient to your desire as a human being, based upon the true heart and not merit. And what I mean by that is that you can be a good person and not have dominion, and you can be an evil person and have dominion. Why is that? Because it's not about merit. It never has been about merit. The reaping and sowing, or the karmic mechanism, is the only thing that is a mechanism in place that has merit. So it doesn't matter what you do, it matters about what you actually want from the universe. The universe is conspiring on your behalf to be unconditionally obedient to the sons of Adam. So she says, why isn't the command to subdue and have dominion here? Well, what happened? Why is it not present in this instruction? There's one of three ways, two ways, four ways, I think. Let's see. Let me see. The scenarios. The scenario would be it's assumed and expected, and Noah has to be reminded of the other three. The second scenario is it was removed. The third scenario is that it was concealed. And the fourth scenario is that it was removed at the expulsion of the garden. So my first question is can we prove the dominion of man after the garden?
Through scripture. That would be a good question. Well, I guess it depends on one of the questions that was brought up earlier. If, if it was man's violence that brought the violence upon the earth, or if it was the earth's violence that brought men to violence, or how that happened. So I'm not sure.
So I do see a clear change in this, right? I see that subdue and dominion are gone, and fear and dread are in its place.
Okay.
There's no longer harmony between man and beast, bird, earth, maybe whatever. Now there's separation. In 9.
Okay.
So we have, fruitful, multiply, subdue, and dominion, and now we have fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, fear and dread.
Okay. So is there a time when that appears to have been restored?
Fear and dread?
Nope. The dominion. I'm going to share with you guys what I think this is. And I'm going to explain to you that this isn't sealed in my mind. I think if somebody came along and expressed enough doubt, they could unseat what I believe about this. But my world of study and the extremity of the study that I have done on this is that something changed retroactively and proactively with Yeshua's resurrection. In that, it says that Paul says a number of things in Romans chapter 8 that would be indicative of the creation mechanism of dominion being in place and Paul knowing it was present in such a way that we would actually have a restoration as a result of Yeshua's resurrection. Like that it changed retroactively all the way back to Noah, the dominion that was lost. Thoughts?
We just had someone just before you gave that answer send a message and tell us, yes, that Yeshua's death and resurrection.
Oh, on YouTube?
No, someone texted me personally.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
Okay. And so in principle, who is it?
I'm not going to mention their
Okay,
name.
I don't need to. I'm not going to mention their name. Who is it though? Oh yeah, that's who I thought it was. Okay, so at any rate, yeah. So it comes from
just only because I don't know if you want it to be mentioned.
Yeah. So
so
this is what I'm going to say. It is one of our congregation members, but often people ask me, "What is your favorite scripture?" And I say, it is not an Old Testament scripture. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, yep, it's a New Testament scripture. And they're like, there's no way. You're a rabbi. You're an Old Testament expert. Come on. And I'm like, you don't get it. There is only one verse in all of the history of the entire Bible that is more important than any other verse. And it is, and I quote out of the New King James, if the spirit of him who raised Christ from the dead dwells within you, he will give life to your mortal bodies. Your very existence at this time is contingent upon the power of the resurrection. Paul in Philippians says, I consider being a Pharisee, which is the highest order of Torah observance. He says that as to the law, a Pharisee. In other words, you can't get any higher in Torah observance than a Pharisee. A Hebrew of Hebrews, a rabbi of rabbis, etc. type of communication. Meaning what? He finds all that stuff to be high in status, counting it as dung in exchange for the knowledge of resurrection, which was granted to him when he resurrected that guy from the dead who fell out the window because he fell asleep during Paul's message, which I think some of my congregation members can relate to that guy.
No, we can't.
As you can see, I may have sunk lower in my chair, but I got another 3 hours in me. No, I don't. I actually don't. But anyways, so in my opinion, Yeshua restored dominion and then retroactively restored it when he resurrected from the dead. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's what I believe. Now, like I said, if you were to come to me and give me a nice swift kick in that direction, you might be able to unseat that belief. But for now, you cannot and you will not. Okay? All right. Next question. Is that question satisfied?
I think that question is satisfied.
Next question.
Oh, I don't think we have any more questions.
Oh,
I think the next thing on the list is the rainbow in your rabbi's nugget.
okay. So here's the deal. I am not going to ask this as a question. I'm going to present the information and see where this goes. But short version is there are things you don't know that are very important about the things that are mentioned in Genesis chapter 9. 8. 8? 9. Let me look. "13. 9:13. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of the covenant between me and the earth." Get ready. So let's start at the very beginning here. How do I want to do this? I think I want to do free form on this tablet and share my screen. If this does not rattle your cage, I have a lot to learn about how to rattle your cage. This is some of the craziest stuff I've ever seen. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So on a plant, if you have a plant and it sprouts out its first leaf, and that is a top down, you know what, that is an ugly leaf. Let's see, let's just use like a spade shaped leaf. There we go. That's a prettier leaf with its little veins coming out of it. Okay. All right. So the premise is A, every one of these veins, if we were to take, and I'm just going to draw a red line over the top of this, if we were to take this line as 180 degrees, each one of these veins would have an inside angle, or is it an outside angle? It's an outside angle. An outside angle of that angle right there of 137.5. Boy, 137.5
Human.
degrees. Okay. The inside angle is 42.5 degrees. Okay. Now, here's the crazy part. That's just the veins of the leaf. The next leaf that grows will be exactly 137.5 degrees away from the other leaf in order to create optimal light and nutrient reception. So not only do we have the veins of the leaf doing 137.5 degrees for optimal nutrition reception, but we have the actual next growth at 137.5 degrees. The next one after that will grow over here at guess what angle to the other one? Now, if we were to draw a circle, let's draw a green circle around our stem. And let's measure the angle from 137.5 to 360, because a full circle would be 360, right? So what is the other angle? 137.5. So we'll add another 0 here. So we get rid of that, and we make this a 9 and make this a 10 and this a 5, and 9 minus 7 is 2, 5 minus 3 is 2, and 3 minus 1 is 2. 222.5 is the complementary 360-degree angle of 137.5. 222 divided by, let's go get our calendar here, or I mean our calculator here, if I have one. Do I have a calculator in this tablet? I don't know if I do.
There it is.
Let's go and let's take a look at this. So 360 divided by 222.5 equals 1.61, and we will round that to 8. Does anybody know what 1.618 is?
Ooh.
Yeah, you go right ahead.
Isn't it the Fibonacci?
Somewhat. It is somewhat the Fibonacci. Now, having said that, let's go ahead and let's take a look at a sunflower. Okay. Let's see. Let's go here. There we go. Now, what you need to know is that the ratio of this spiral of this sunflower is 137.5 degrees. Now, let me explain to you what you have just witnessed. What you just witnessed is the golden ratio apparent in nature as a degree of angle at which, when something's growing, it grows out here, and then the next time something grows, it's going to grow out here. Now, Einstein, when he was 15 years old, almost died. A lot of you probably don't know this story. He was on a hike with an excursion in, I think, the Alps with his high school group, and found a flower he didn't know of. Okay. Off the side of the cliff. So this goofy dude, and I'm sure this story has gotten embellished, but I'm going to tell it in its extreme, hooks the buckle of his boot on the edge of a branch and hangs off the tree so that he can get close enough to the flower to use his inclinometer, which of course was in his repertoire of tools.
Right, because you take that on a hike.
To check the angle of the flower to see if it had indeed grown at the 137.5 degree golden angle, which consequently is the complementary reciprocal of the golden ratio divided by 360 degrees, or 222.5 minus 360 is 137.5. But 180 minus 137.5 is 42.5, and you're going to love this. So now you know that even Einstein was obsessed with this, right? To the extent of death. Now, when we think about the spectrum of color, we do not know what we're actually experiencing. So here what I have is let me share this real quick here. And then after that, we're going to end because I'm getting sleepy. Here what I have is a water droplet. That's a horrible water droplet. You know, maybe they've got an already pre-made shape. Let's try that. Let's see if they've got a water droplet that's a pre-made droplet. God forbid they have a water droplet, yeah? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay. So maybe not. We don't even have weather? Now what science? Oh, we're getting closer. I feel like okay, we're not getting closer. Never mind. Okay, I'll try to draw it better here, but my hand is shaking so much. Okay. That's a water droplet, believe it or not. Just accept that, okay? Go with it. All right. Here is the sun. Yoink. And its rays are shooting at the water droplet. But the water bends the angle of the original angle. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and draw this. We'll draw the original angle all the way through the water droplet as it should be. But the water droplet actually, let's go blue, bends the angle. Look at that, just horrible shaking going on. Bends the angle of the water in such a way, actually, I think it actually bends it up, come to think of it. Bends it up in such a way that it ends up reflecting off the back at a certain angle. You have to be standing. Here's Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo kicking it. There's rain in the clouds, right? Good old Joe Schmo.
Oh,
and he's
in awe too.
Yeah. He's in awe. And what has happened is his eyeball is exactly approximately, dealing with dynamics here. So When we're dealing with dynamics, we can never say 100% true because we're dealing with irrational numbers. There's my approximate. Approximately 42.5 degrees to the angle of the sun shining through the water droplet and reflecting off the back of the water droplet back at your eye is the color red. So the boundary top of the angle of the droplet is actually showing the boundary top of the rainbow. Now, since there's a water droplet just barely below it, we see what? We see the color orange, right? Because it's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So each subsequent water droplet creates the next piece of the rainbow at the angle of our eye, dropping all the way down to approximately 40, which is violet. Now, why is this true? Why is you standing with your back to the sun, facing the water droplets, creating this rainbow? Because your eye, and here's the boom explosion, if this does not just blow your brain, the human eyeball itself, let me see if I can draw this pretty. I don't know if I can. The human eyeball itself sees in a three-dimensional 137.5 degree field of view. The reason you can see the rainbow is because your eye was actually shaped to see it. It's the reciprocal of 180 degrees. 180 degrees minus 137.5 equals 42.5, which is the upper limit of the red visible. Meaning you can't see past this, which means you could never see the 222.5, which means there is always concealed light. Kabbalah right in your face with mathematics and science. But here's the crazy part about it. What else has optimized the reception of light? What else has made itself able to receive light at the most optimal spacing? Plants. At what degree? 137.5. Talking about cycles and being in line with nature. You see what your eye has actually become? It has the ability to see the concealed covenant in the threat of the flood, the cloud. I don't know how to explain this to you, but the idea that you could that you could observe the covenant sealed in the threat.
Well, the cloud is the concealment, right?
Explain.
The cloud is what comes in between us and the light. If we look at our physical world, we look at our physical world and everything that is made shows the attributes of God. The cloud is what comes in between us.
The sun and us. Mm-hmm.
The sun and us. So the light.
But if our back is to the sun,
right,
then, okay, so now it gets even more esoteric because the ancient Hebrew philosophy has the person facing the Mediterranean, understanding the chaos, swallowing the light or the sun. So it's a work in chaos, right? And then here's the next part. that element of the sun then being the illumination rising in the east. Your back is to the east because in Hebrew philosophy, the future is behind you or you can't see it yet. What is past is in front of you. You can see it. It's visible to you. And then that context or that idea starting to manifest as the idea that you must turn to the east and move towards the light. And then it will be known. A change in direction, looking at the 222.5 degrees in the 360-degree circle, which is actually only proven through the somewhat speculative mathematics of astrology in watching the mazal, watching the zodiac. That's where we get our 360-degree circle from, is the ancients watching the zodiac, and consequently they were somewhat inaccurate. We have 365 days, not 360. So technically the Kirk circle should technically be 365. But the premise is that the same degree that a branch is coming off of a tree, both at its angle upward and at its angle outward, as in the next one polar on the polar coordinates is going to be at another 137 degrees, is all about the optimization of receiving nutrients and light, equidistant spacing, perfect community. Each cell working on behalf of the other to space the sprouts in such a way so that every one of the leaves, the veins, the branches receives the most optimal, not necessarily equal amount of light. I look at this tree out here and my head explodes because I realized my eye was designed that same way so I could see one single thing. If you were just even a degree off towards 43, you wouldn't be able to see the red in the rainbow, and you wouldn't be able to see the purple in a rainbow. You might see orange and maybe green, but that's it. We see the entirety of the rainbow because of that 137.5 degree field of vision. But 222.5 degrees of the 360 degree sphere, notice I said sphere because these are spherical, is hidden, concealed. And it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it is the glory of kings, us who have dominion because of Yeshua's resurrection, to search it out. Drash, which is what we've done today. We've midrashed. Any comments before we finish?
Mm-hmm. Amen. So received another comment. She says, when you see the rainbow, Abba is speaking specifically to you.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt in my mind. Everybody sees the rainbow differently. Some see it at 42.00001. Some people see it that the maximum is 42.5. If it's like 42.52, you could not see the red. Some crazy stuff, especially when we start to get into frequency and vibration. All color is an octave of the sounds, which are octaves of the cycles. Oh man, could we go crazy with that? Because then we get into man was made for the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The cycles were made for man, not man for the cycles. The vibrations were made for man, not man for the vibrations. The rainbow was made for man, not man for the rainbow. Watch out, alphabet soup. Right? Okay. Any other thoughts? Boy, them dogs are getting it.
Yes, they are.
Where's Cash?
Cash. Think we're good?
Okay. All right. Well, there we go. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.